Recently, I have worked on my info function and refactored it to be much better. But before I show it off, I'll show you how my previous info function worked. First of all, let me show you off the two versions of it. The main one disappears after I think 2 seconds. Yeah. And the other stays on the screen until I press escape. I have two hotkeys here for each one of them. So let's spam the disappearing version first. Hold on. Now we can. Now they will start disappearing, and if I hold down the button, they overlap and get destroyed from the oldest to the newest. As you can see, once an info overlaps, I can't see the info behind it. So it existing is not worth it. Doesn't really matter, you could say. Okay. Now let's switch to the non-disappearing one. So I have 4 right now. I press escape 2 times. What would be amazing is that the new ones take up these 2 places that are now free. But no, when I press it again, it just continues on, being in this awkward space, not taking up the now free spaces, which is kinda annoying. Also, would be amazing to be able to click on the infos that I want to destroy. Not a feature because of how the implementation worked. Okay, now let's pop in a disappearing info. It's going to appear here, and what I would like is for it to disappear. But see what happens. This one disappeared. This is the new info that disappears. Yet a permanent info disappeared instead. Now, you might say, how did you even use this before? Usually, I'm not gonna have more than 1 or maybe 2 infos on the screen. So functionally, that didn't really matter. It was okay. But I was not okay with just okay. So I made it better. Now we will check out the new version. So let's go, Vim. So change. Okay, yeah, that's how it works. Perfect. So not actually change, but delete. Boom. Okay. Now we're going to be using the new info, and this code you can ignore. I mean, I'll give you a look. I won't explain it though, because that's not what I use anymore, and I don't recommend using this code. Still, you can look at it. If you want more than just a video, but the actual code instead that you can copy and figure out, you'll have to dig through my commits. Hold on, give me a moment. Delete 55 down. Okay. Now we're going to be using the new info. First of all, we will use disappearing ones. So I keep on pressing, and you can already see that once something disappears, it is now a free place, and it's taking up. I'll show that off better later though. Let's hold down the hotkey so the infos are created as fast as possible. They only start overlapping once they time out. Before, when I held down the button, the numbers would change meaning that new infos were going over and over and over. That doesn't happen anymore. They don't overlap. Once the screen is occupied with the infos, you cannot create more. Now, you might say that this is a disadvantage. In a sense, I guess, yeah, but if you can't see the older infos, they're useless. And let's see how many there are even. There are 14 infos. That's more than enough for seeing information that I will usually have. So I don't really need more at a time. Okay, let's show off the feature that I was talking about before. First of all, now we can click on individual infos to delete them. Now when I create new infos, they fit those spaces. And I keep pressing, nothing is happening because all the spaces are taken. So I have two options to delete infos. Either click on the ones that I don't need, or press or hold escape to delete the oldest ones. Okay, now let's have two permanent infos and one disappearing one. And only that one disappears. The permanent ones don't, as they're supposed to be, which is amazing. Okay, now let's get to the code. I'll explain how it works. Okay, first of all, we create the GUI that's always on top, doesn't have a caption, and is dark mode. What the fuck is dark mode, right? Let me show you. Here it is. We change the back color, so the background color. Set fonts by default to 20. You can pass the font size if you want to have a different one. Make the font a white-ish color that looks nicer than just white, and set a font of Consolas. That's the setting that I use in pretty much all of my GUIs. Let's check them out. 1, 2, 3. I don't have the clock anymore. This, yeah. The runner that I showed you off recently. There's probably more, but I don't remember all of them. All of them are kinda situational, meaning I'll remember what to use when I need it. Okay, coming back. Now we add the text that we pass into the function, and these two things, and also with this. This is the cream of this function, of how it works. So we take the margin, the vertical margin, multiplied by 5. That is surprisingly precisely how wide the GUI is. Okay, and to get the maximum infos there can be on the screen, we divide the height of your screen by the width of every single one and floor it. So it depends on your screen and the font size that you set, but I think it's better to have an empty space here than for it to create an info here, which text I can't see. So it's a design decision. You could say seal or just round. That's why I decided it makes the most sense. Okay. We create a map, available places. So essentially marking the coordinates, the y coordinates of every place where an info could be. now we fill this map with the actual y coordinates. So this is the first place, the key is 0, then I think 60, 120, 180, and so on. So instead of having keys, this is the first place, this is the second place, this is the third place, this is the fourth place. No, it doesn't work like that. It actually has the coordinates, which I think comes into play later. So to explain this, index is 0, so the first one, the first place, is 1 multiplied by GUI width, which is I think once again 60, and minus 60, so we end up at 0. The first info will always be at 0. Then the second one, 2 multiplied by 60, 120 minus 60. The second coordinates is at 60. So a bit of math to populate the map. This is why the function actually works. First, it's a map with all the possible coordinates. The values of those keys are false, meaning those places are not taken. And run once, the fact that it's a static variable. Essentially what I wanted to do with this is static loop, but that's not a thing, unfortunately. Essentially a way to only run this loop the first time the function is ran. And once you do, it doesn't create a new map anymore, because otherwise it would overwrite the places that are currently taken and decrease performance. Okay. By the way, I just want to mention, I've been having a lot of fun recording for the second channel. It takes far less effort and I get to show off things that don't really make sense to make a video on the main channel. I recorded, I think, 4 videos the last 2 or 3 days, which is a lot for me. And yeah, it's really fun. It's currently gonna date this video. It's the 10th of October, and I have videos scheduled up to the 16th. With this video included, up to the 19th, I think. Yeah, it's been really fun. I hope you enjoy my videos. Now, for key value in available places, what does this mean? Essentially, every time we run the info function, we go through the I think it's going to be easier to show with these on. We go through all the possible places that could potentially be taken. So we check this place. Is this place taken? Yes. Okay. Is this one? Yes, it's taken. Is this one? No, it's not taken. Okay, now it's not taken. Okay, we can now use this place. And once a place is used, the value of this key, of this y coordinate, is set to true, meaning it's occupied, and we can't override it. This is the reason why when we fill all the places and then keep pressing the hotkey, nothing happens, because it didn't find a free place in all of these. It couldn't. But once we have a place, it starts from the top and goes to the bottom trying to find a free place. And since the first place is not occupied, it just takes that. So if value is true, meaning occupied, we continue. Like go to the next place, the Y60, I think. I could be continuously wrong on the specific coordinates, and that doesn't really matter because those are set automatically depending on the font size that you put in and the height of your screen. But if the value is not true, meaning false, a free space, here it is, then the current y coordinates is the key of the map. That's where it comes in handy. Because instead of being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we actually made the keys be the y coordinates. We just take the key of the map and make it the y coordinate this info is going to appear in. And we make that key to true, meaning occupied. And once we do, we break. But once again, if we didn't find a free place, this is what makes it stop. If current y coord is not set, the only way for it to be set is if we found a false value, so a free space. If we didn't, current y coord doesn't exist, or rather isn't set yet. So if the y coord is not set, we destroy the GUI that we already created, and we return out of the function, doing nothing after. So nothing appears, no errors, nothing. It returns 0, which in the AHK means false. I don't use that in any logic, but I could. Say I try info, and if info, then do something after it. Or if not info, show something else or do something else. If there are no spaces to have a new info, which could be quite useful. Okay, destruction we'll come back to later. Now we create the hotkey. If the info exists, so this info with an ID of this, doesn't really matter what it actually is because it's programmatically made, then we make a hotkey escape for it. That does destruction. The same thing when we click on it. Okay. What do we bind to destruction? We bind the ID of the window of this GUI and the current y coord. So the y coordinate or the key. Actually both. Let's go to destruction now. So we disable the hotkey. For this GUI specifically, we close the window of this GUI using the ID that we passed, and we set the value of this y coord in the map to false, meaning it's now not occupied, and the next info can use it. Boom. Same thing for click. Exactly the same thing, just a different method, and you can specify which info exactly to close. Because escape, how hotkeys work, it just deletes the oldest. So you have no way to specify which exactly. Okay? Now, if auto close timeout, the second parameter you can pass into info, it is destroyed automatically. Boom. By default, it's 2 seconds. So the timer does the same exact thing. As you can see, it binds the same parameters. It does destruction. The same thing, but now automatically. But I'm pretty sure, I actually don't think I have tried this before. Huh. Yeah, I absolutely can use escape to preemptively... Wait. That's actually interesting. So yeah, I was using the correct hotkey. I do a bunch, and I disable them before they disable themselves. And still it works. I thought I was going to get an error. Interesting. This is because when closed, let's actually look at it a bit closer. It's essentially the same thing as when close by AHK, but better. It actually posted the message to the window to essentially click this button. It's more efficient than when close for whatever reason. And since it has a try statement, if the window doesn't exist, there's no error, because I don't care. I just want it to try to close a window. If there's no window, well, obviously don't close it, because there's no window. I don't care whether or not it succeeded, because if it didn't, it did, in a really strange fashion. And on destruction, yeah, I already explained that. Perfect. And the last thing that happens, the actual info is shown. It's auto size, so whatever text you put in will be auto size. Let's do that. So infos. This is a really long text. Infos. But this isn't. Infos. As you can see, it auto-sized to whatever length it needed. Okay, and if everything succeeded, so if there was a place and the new info appeared, it returns the ID of that window. Once again, I don't use that yet, but it could be really useful, because essentially what you're doing, say info hello. Boom, now you can use this variable as the ID of the info that's there. So you can create an info and close it after you do something. Let me give a more concrete example. So info have another infos. The while loop is ongoing. So while, not actually while, let's just do a normal loop that sleeps for, it's in milliseconds, right? Yep. So let's do 100, 10 times, so it's gonna be a second, then 100. It's gonna be 10 seconds. Okay, then 50. Cool. And now, when close, not that one, when close, info, have another. Boom. So what's going to happen? First we see a loop, first we see an info, the loop is going on, and then after it's done, the window is automatically closed. So it's ongoing, although it's not a while loop actually, and it disappeared after something is done. Could potentially be really useful. I just haven't used it yet, but I'm glad I implemented it. Now the second function, which is not really a function, is just syntax sugar, because by default infos stays, and if you want to have a disappearing info, you have to always provide the timeout in milliseconds, essentially how long until it disappears. Info makes it so you don't have to. You just use a different function that by default disappears in 2 seconds. So infos to 1000 and info are the same exact thing. They're the same. But with info you have to type less. And say you use a lot of info in your project, always specifying the same number. But now you want to make that number something different by default. For example, I used to use 1 second, but realized that it's not always long enough, so I changed it to 2000, and I had to go in and change every time I call infos with a different timeout now. But if you just use info, you can change the default here to say 3000 for 3 seconds. So your code becomes a bit drier, I guess. Yeah. It's not necessary, I just feel like it's nice. Okay. I hope you can see the power of this, how nice it is to use. Rather than having message boxes you always have to press enter for, or use tray tips that are too long and not as clear to read. What else is there? Tooltips are just unreadable in my opinion. About font size. The reason why it's not a parameter instead is because everything would break. The first time we run the function, as you remember, the map is created, pointing out all the y coordinates that could be there. If we change the font size, they're different because the margin would change. And it's also static, by the way. So choose one font, you can set it like this, and use it always. I use 20. If you like it, you don't have to change anything. Now, where to get this function? Maintaining links on many videos takes a lot of work, so I'm not going to. It's already annoying enough doing that on the main channel. I'm not going to maintain links on the second channel. However, it's very easy to find this function. You go to my GitHub page that I have a link for, to my lib-v2 project, and it has the file info.ahk. And it has this file. 2 dependencies, I'm pretty sure. First of all, GUI, where we have defined this method for dark mode. It's in the same repo, file GUI.ahk, and another dependency, WinClose, WinAHK. You don't need this whole file, you can just copy this function, copy this, put it somewhere in your script, and here you go. Now you can use infos freely. I hope you enjoyed this video and have a good day.